Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of St Helens Borough Council Cabinet. Before we begin with the formal agenda, we're going to go through and I'm going to ask everyone, all the members present, just to introduce themselves and the Cabinet role. We've also got three scrutiny members with us, so I'll ask them to introduce themselves as well. So I'll start. I'm Councillor David Baines. I'm the leader of St Helens Borough Council. Councillor Andy Bowden.
Okay, good afternoon. My name's Councillor Andy Bowden and I'm the Cabinet Member for the Environment and Transport.
Thank you. Councillor Anthony Burns.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Burns. I'm the Council Cabinet Member for Public Health, Leisure, Libraries and Heritage.
Councillor Jeannie Bell.
Hello, I'm Councillor Jeannie Bell and I'm Cabinet Member for Stronger and Safer Communities.
Councillor Kate Grucut.
Councillor Kate Grokett, Cabinet Member for Education, Skills and Business.
Councillor Marlene Quinn. Councillor Quinn.
Sorry about that. The system keeps going. Councillor Marlene Quinn, Cabinet Member for Adult Health and Social Care.
Thank you, Marlene. Councillor Martin Bond.
I'm Martin Bond. I'm a Cabinet Member for Finance and Governance.
Councillor Nova Charlton.
Councillor Nova Charlton, Cabinet Member for Protecting Young People.
Councillor Richard Macaulay.
Thanks, Leader. Richard Macaulay, Thatcherheath Ward Councillor and Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Councillor Seb Gomez Aspron.
Hello, I'm Seb Gomez Aspron. I'm a councillor for Newton and Willows and the Cabinet Member for Reset and Recovery.
Thank you. And that's the Cabinet. And I will introduce the backbench scrutiny members who are with us this afternoon. So Councillor Mancy Uddin.
Hi, I'm Councillor Mancy Uddin. I'm Ward Councillor for Windle and I also chaired the task group on paper and plastic.
Councillor Michelle Sweeney.
Hi, I'm Councillor Michelle Sweeney, Town Centre Ward, and I was the 2019-20 Chair for Safer Communities and undertook the spotlight on county lines.
Thanks, Michelle. And last but not least, Councillor Tricia Long.
Hello everybody, I'm Councillor Tricia Long, Councillor for Mossbank Ward, current Chair of the Children and People's Services Scrutiny Panel Committee and Chair of the Task and Finish Group on Apprenticeships for Children We Look After.
Thanks, Tricia. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll move on then to the formal agenda. So item 1 is apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Kath O'Dwyer. And there are no more I'm aware of.
No more apologies.
Thanks, Joanne. Item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July. Are they agreed? I'll sign them at a later date.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any?
No.
Chair, I've got one.
Yep.
Yes, so I'll declare an interest in item 14, and then following that, the rest of the items on the agenda for Red Bank, as I'm a governor on Penkford School. So I'll be declaring interest, and at that stage, I'll leave the meeting as it's the last item anyway, so I can't contribute.
Thank you. Okay, item 4 then brings us on to issues arising from overview and scrutiny. 4A is a report on apprenticeships for children we look after, and I'll hand over to Councillor Tricia Long.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I understand you want me to give you an overview of our report from the Task and Finish group. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So the topic for the Task and Finish group arose out of wanting to be sure that the help we as a council and corporate parents give to our looked after children and care leavers to get employment or get into employment or training is the best it can be. With that at the forefront of our minds, and knowing that nationally, care leavers do much worse than their counterparts in terms of accessing employment and training, we set out, as you can see at the top of page 4 of the report, to, I'm presuming you've all got copies of the report, is that right? Yeah. To review the actions from a previous piece of scrutiny work in 2016 on this topic, to look at what the council offers now in terms of advice and guidance, but also work and work related opportunities for our looked after children and care leavers, what schools and colleges do to help, and what the borough's employers offer. So what I'll do now is I'll just pick out the key points from the report. So you can see, if you turn to page 7, that most of the actions for the 2016 piece of work were completed. Of the 2 actions that weren't, one we felt still needs to be done, which we've picked up in our current work and I'll come on to later. In terms of work, so going back to our second aim, it's clear that a lot of good work is done to support looked after children and care leavers to progress into employment and training when they're ready. So some examples of that: on page 8, you've got the delivery of employability programmes by the care leavers team at 4.14 and 4.15. Page 11, the virtual school work, which, in addition to close tracking and monitoring and provision of early help, has engaged with Liverpool University to provide 18 looked after children with undergraduate mentors to help develop their skills and knowledge and raise aspirations. That's at 4.33. Bottom of page 12, the Future Generations Programme and the Ambassador Scheme 4.38 works specifically with looked after children and care leavers to improve their confidence. And at the top of page 13, 4.39, the council has an education, employment and training coordinator who is currently, or at the time of writing the report, was exploring and developing more work opportunities for looked after children and care leavers with local employers. However, at the time of writing the report, it's true to say there were only 2 care leavers on an apprenticeship within the council and none elsewhere. That's identified on page 8 of the report at 4.12. Barriers included on page 9, things like money. So the apprenticeship wage, as we all know, is too low. Also, the complications caused by the increased rollout of universal credit. So where's that? That's at the bottom of page 4. 4.19. What we found really was that to improve things, it was agreed really that an overarching strategy covering all the support for looked after children and care leavers to help them engage with employment and training would be key to join up the work done by the different departments within the council, to provide the ability to review practice, identify what was working well and what needs to improve, and also for target setting. And as stated on page 10, at 4.25, our young people's lived experiences and voices should be central to that strategy. So in terms of findings and recommendations, if you just turn to page 15, 5.2 is about the members on the task and finish group having more access to more data on the destinations of our looked after children and care leavers in terms of their progression into employment and training and education, because this would help members identify more clearly how effective the work of the council is and whether we need to do things differently. So that translates into recommendation 6.1 on page 16. Going back to page 15 at 5.3, the next finding was that, as I've just said, there does need to be an overall strategy with targets to ensure all the work and support the council provides for our looked after children care leavers to progress successfully into employment and training or further education or higher education is joined up and can be regularly reviewed. This was a finding of the previous scrutiny work, and that's the outstanding action from last time. That translates into recommendation 6.2 on page 16, and recommendation 6.3 is about ensuring that the lived experiences and views of our looked after children and care leavers are at the heart of that strategy. Critically, there needs to be more work-related opportunities and apprenticeships offered first and foremost by the council, and it follows by other employers in the borough, to make sure there's more opportunities for care leavers to apply for. This has been recommended by Ofsted to other councils, as you can see on page 13 and 14, on the Wirral, in Nottinghamshire and Dorset. So we should do it here too. So that translates into recommendation 6.4 over on page 17, that a review, I'm going to read it out so we're clear, that a review be undertaken regarding further traineeships, apprenticeships and work experience opportunities that council services could offer to care leavers and looked after children. And I think that shows you that the focus of our task and finish group did broaden as the meeting went on. So it broadened from just apprenticeships to looking at traineeships and work experience and internships. The remaining recommendations on page 17, 6.5 to 6.8, are practical steps to improving our looked after children and care leavers engagement with progression guidance and actual progression, their next steps. And they cover things like reviewing the council's website to make sure the language engages children and young people, and also that there's sufficient careers guidance content there for them as well. We looked at officers. We suggested the development of a tool to ensure looked after children and care leavers fully understood the range of progression routes available to them, and that they're guided or supported to make a choice, a career choice, so they have something to aim for and are clear about the entry criteria they need. So while advice is given, it's not really nailed down in their plans, and it was felt that that would be a really good step to take. Next one is about the education, employment and training post that was temporary, and the recommendation was to make it permanent, which I think might have taken place now. And lastly, all schools join the ambassador programme. Most schools have, but not all. So it's important that any looked after child in a school has the opportunity to take part in that. And then at 6.9, you can see the work we'd like to take forward. We feel it would make a further significant contribution to improving care leavers' progression into the workplace. So that's it from me. Has anybody got any questions?
Thank you. Well, we're going to go to Councillor Charlton first of all, who's going to respond formally to the report. Nova.
Thank you, Councillor Long. As you well know, it's very close to my heart, this piece of work, because I was a personal advisor for many years working with disadvantaged young people. So I really want to thank you for doing this piece of scrutiny, because it's so important, really, that we support our young people going forward. In terms of the recommendations, absolutely sound and achievable. And in terms of some of the things that you've said, I'm pleased to report that the EAT coordinator has now got a permanent post. So she has been making a real difference. I know at time of writing the report, the post wasn't permanent, but I can assure you it is now. So we've got a dedicated personal advisor. She's got the knowledge, the skills, you know, to offer good quality information, advice and guidance, which we both know is really important for getting it right for our young people. She's already started making a difference. If we look at I asked for our EAT figures, so our young people that are in employment, education and training as of this week. So we've got 62% of care leavers aged 19 to 21 and 58% of care leavers aged 17 to 18. So in the context of COVID, that is a very good place to be in, you know, and nationally we're bucking the trend. So we're doing better than our statistical neighbours, which is really positive. I think in terms of some of the other pieces of work that have been going on that tie in neatly to the piece of scrutiny work is the Care Leavers Conference that was held in March, where we had employers, we had members of the Ambassadors Programme, and that was looking at the aim of supporting our care leavers going forward and what opportunities are people locally offering to our young people with that additional support that we know that young people need in terms of sustaining, because it's one thing to get a job, but then you've got to sustain it, you know, and it's about those outcomes and what you were talking about in terms of we want to monitor those outcomes. We want to know what the statistics are, and through this EAT role, the EAT coordinator, the personal advisor, she should be feeding some of that information back in. And then I think another important point which the report highlights is the responsibility of the local authority. So it's been said many times in the improvement board, we are the family firm, we are a council, they are our children and our young people. We should be looking after them and providing them with opportunities. So I absolutely welcome the recommendation to review traineeships, apprenticeships, work opportunities. As a council, we should be doing that. They are our kids. We look after them. We are the family firm. So I look forward to that piece of work being conducted and the strategy that's developed going forward. I take that on board wholeheartedly. So I really do want to thank you for bringing this to Cabinet. It's been a very difficult time and it's been a great piece of work. And I look forward to hearing about the work going forward and the recommendations and anything that you bring back to Cabinet. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Nova. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments from Cabinet? Okay, do we agree the recommendations then on page 10 of the Cabinet report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Long. Really appreciate your attendance and all the hard work that went into the report. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. 4B is a report on the council's use of paper and plastics from the task group report. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Uddin.
Thanks, David. I'm just going to share my presentation. Give me a second. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you.
No worries. Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly give an overview of what we did on the task group and what our recommendations were. So we started this review back in 2019 to explore how much paper and plastic we use as an authority, looking at where we've got good practice and areas that we can improve. We also looked beyond that to see what new initiatives we could introduce to improve our green agenda more broadly. The rationale for this task group was simple. I'm sure you've all seen, oh sorry, I've not changed the slide. The rationale for this task group was really simple. I'm sure you've all seen the images of seashores here in the UK and across the world littered with rubbish and plastic. Between 4.8 and 12.7 million tonnes of plastic enter the ocean each year. 35% of global deforestation is due to our appetite for paper. This amounts to the destruction of 4.1 million hectares of forest each year. We have a moral and collective responsibility to respect and look after our environment. And finally, we have made a local commitment to enacting greener, more environmentally friendly policies and practices. The aims and objectives of this review were pretty self-explanatory. The main purpose of the report was to ensure the council reduces its paper and plastic use, ensuring that our contractors and partners are encouraged to do the same, to embed whether or not something is eco-friendly into the authority's decision-making, and finally, maximising the use of technology which recent months has shown to be very effective. So just a little bit on progress. So during this process, it was really heartening to see what we are already doing in trying to reduce paper and plastic. For example, new technology introduced as part of the tech refresh really facilitated our ability to work from home and work remotely, which has been crucial to our functioning in recent months. We also found out that procurement have been using recycled products for the last 12 years and have been increasing their use each year since. 74% of the council stationery products are environmentally friendly. And lastly, Democratic Services saved £40,000 just from reducing paper, which was aided by Modern Gov. So finally, I just wanted to highlight a few recommendations because they really do go beyond just paper and plastic and can lead to a lot more really meaningful change. We came up with 14 recommendations in total, and I think they will be really effective in achieving our aims. So on the whole, our progress has been somewhat slow in response to the climate emergency. I know a lot of this has been out of our hands and we've had significant changes made to our structures, and this compiled with the recent pandemic has prolonged that delay, but also acted as a catalyst in other respects, as we've seen with the technology we've been using for the past few months. So firstly, establishing a climate action working group of some form is not just limited to looking at paper and plastic consumption. This working group can also analyse our carbon emissions, explore cleaner energy sources, look at how to encourage modal shifts within the borough, and so on. Secondly, appointing an accountable officer who can lead on climate change is absolutely essential. The remit of the climate change agenda is so vast and varied, it needs someone with the knowledge and enthusiasm to navigate all of this, take it forward, and more importantly, bring it together. Finally, ensuring that councillors and senior officers undergo climate emergency training is essential. It is an issue that crosses all departments and portfolios, so it's important that we have a really good understanding of the main issues and how to address them. One of the other good things about the training is looking at what other authorities are doing, and it's a great way to network with other people who are trying to do the same things that we're doing. These really are the structures we need in place to make bigger change and to develop wider environmental policies. A lot of this work has already begun and is in progress, so I look forward to what's to come. So thank you for listening, and that's a quick overview of that task group.
Thank you very much, Councillor Uddin. That was an excellent presentation and it's a fantastic report. I'm going to ask Andy Bowden, Councillor Bowden, to respond formally on behalf of the Cabinet.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can I thank you, Councillor Udin, as the Chair of the Task Group for this report? And can I also take the opportunity to thank the members of the Task Group for their contributions to the work that was undertaken? Please be assured that your recommendations will be taken seriously, and I will bring back to you a detailed response on how the Council will adopt the recommendations and put them into action. Reading this report, and from our conversations in your role as climate change champion, and also conscious of the motion you brought to Council, I have begun to look forward and to consider how we as a borough will respond to the challenges of growing back greener and in a more sustainable way in response to both climate change and the impact that the pandemic is having. I will respond formally, of course, but change has to start somewhere. Therefore, it is my intention to build on the work you have undertaken and also to address the Council's climate change emergency by setting up a Climate Change Commission. My aim will be to bring together partners from across the borough to consider the St Helens response to climate change, to explore what we can do in our individual organisations and what more can be done by working together. Tackling this problem will not be easy, and we must all play our part. The Council itself will act as a responsible organisation, reducing our consumption and minimising our carbon emissions, and we will act in our role as a community and civic leaders to convene a commission that will identify how we can achieve carbon reduction as a borough as a whole. Thanks again, Councillor Udin, for your presentation and your report, and I do look forward to feeding back the Council's response in due course.
Thanks, Councillor Bowden. Are there any more questions or comments from Cabinet colleagues? Are the recommendations in the report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Udin, for that excellent report. The next item is 4C, Spotlight Review of County Lines Issues in St Helens Scrutiny Task Group Report. Councillor Sweeney.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for allowing me to present this report. Unfortunately, I'd had hoped to be able to go through it with you on a split screen. However, my voice activated continues to make this pretty challenging. So how I decided to present was you have the report in front of you, and to just explain, as I had done with the Commission when it was presented. It was a joint spotlight review alongside the CYPS, Children and Young People's, chaired by Tricia Long, but Safer Communities took the lead on it, as we wanted to specifically look at what our response was to county lines. We're all aware that nationally this is a major issue, and unfortunately we had the spotlight placed on us by national media. So in response to this, we wanted to get all the partners across and to see what work was specifically being done within our borough. It follows on from the government's serious violence strategy, which was published in 2018 with a recognition of county lines, serious escalating violence, homicides and knife crime. And we specifically wanted to look at our multi-agency approach, as it was identified within the report. There is no one agency that can tackle county lines. We were very impressed in terms of our service led initially under Sarah O'Brien, who had responded excellently when she was lead for children. She'd made a really valid point that yes, this was an issue across the whole country, but also as was the impact of austerity on all of those services that would be expected to respond, rightly so, to the issue of county lines. We recognised within that there is a lot of work that has been undertaken by police, by education, by safeguarding, by criminal justice, the funding that has gone into the Pan Merseyside violence unit via the Police and Crime Commission is undertaking excellent work across the country. There was Sir Giles Trust was undertaking work. Catch 22 had been commissioned into Merseyside to work specifically with children who were identified. There seemed to be a national picture that it was only vulnerable children that were being targeted and drawn into county lines. What has come across nationally via the National Crime Agency is that that's not the case. Many children from many backgrounds are being targeted by this, what is exploitation. It is grooming. They do identify children. It's no different than sexual exploitation in terms of the methods that they use. Now, the people who are behind county lines, the real criminals, they're not going to want to like the term grooming, but that is exactly what they are doing to children who are being asked to carry drugs, knives, weapons, and placing them at even more risk. There was later an addendum made to the serious violence strategy by the Home Secretary recently, with an acknowledgement that many these children are the victims, and I think that's what we wanted to see, whether that was the response that these young people were getting, and we were again reassured that absolutely these children are the victims who are being exploited to do the dirty work of serious criminals and organised gangs, not wanting to put their kind of face to it, identifying, targeting our children. The education under Joe Davis had done a really positive, quick response in saying to schools, look, many of these children are the children who are out of school for a number of reasons, whether they're experiencing challenges in the home, whether they've been excluded, and despite the lack of resources that we have, the local authority responded excellently, offering schools, keep children in at all costs. We will support you, we will offer you more support. There's also the need for a national campaign to be undertaken so that every provider, from social care to education to criminal justice, were aware of what the signs were for children who may be involved in county lines. A number of areas of excellent practice was identified, as you can see within the reports. And unfortunately, as with all of these things with COVID, we're not sure yet whether it's actually had a positive response in terms of children not being able to cross as easily, with there being national lockdowns, things like that. Some initial, I think about 6 weeks ago, some findings came from St Giles's Trust whereby they said they had been able to work better with children in this period, because that is what is needed to get these children safely away from these gangs, and that would be through offering better opportunities, offering pathways to get them away safely, because again, these children are at significant risk. They offer a lot to criminal gangs in terms of what they can do for them, moving monies and drugs. We also identified the issue of cuckooing, whereby these gangs can exploit the most vulnerable in our communities, take over their homes, deal drugs from there. So again, that multi-agency working was absolutely vital in sharing intelligence via housing, via social care, via mental health services. So we were reassured that the work we are certainly undertaking is meeting the needs of our children and our most vulnerable. Again, there's been a number of recommendations. Some of them are not able to be, unfortunately, fulfilled, like going visiting the Mersey violence units because of the pandemic. One of the things we wanted to look at is engaging all governors, but school governors, whether it be councillors. So we're going to do that through the Governors Forum, and get some really good links so that it can be cascaded to everybody who has contact with our children. And I think the rest really speaks for itself. You have the report in front of you. The Commission agreed this is something that will continue to be reviewed, because again, this is an ongoing issue. It's not something that, you know, we can address, but we're certainly confident that we as a borough and our partners are trying to tackle this head on. The areas that government split the policy into, we seem to have grasped that really effectively. I suppose one of the areas that is not clear is when we talk about early intervention, in the same hand as knowing that that is exactly what's been affected through austerity. Some provisions have failed because they've not had a clear view of how that long-term funding will continue. So that has to be really hammered down, and communities to be aware of who our children are who are being affected, and that the services we do need to be delivered at that community level. I wanted to thank Councillor Long and all of the members who were involved in what was a pretty challenging spotlight, but also all of our partner agencies, the officers from the council. They were upfront, honest with the situation we face, and to the most vulnerable. We do not want these children to be criminalised. Once they go into the criminal justice system, then they're lost. And that is not what we need. So that early intervention is crucial. Opportunities for diversion, pathways for diversion away from that. So thank you for the opportunity to present. If you have any questions.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Sweeney. It's an excellent and an important report, so I really appreciate the work that's gone into it. I'm going to ask Councillor Bell to respond formally on behalf of Cabinet.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Sweeney, for bringing this spotlight review together. It's a really important piece of work for the children in the borough, and it does really highlight the growing problem nationally and locally. As others have said, Cabinet will bring a formal response at a future Cabinet meeting, but I did want to just respond very briefly today. So the task group reported and highlighted the current challenges and the range of activity that's ongoing in St Helens. It was great to see that it included recognition of the importance of joint working across a number of council service areas in tackling the exploitation of children and young people. At the last meeting of the People's Board, the board agreed a revised governance structure for our Community Safety Partnership, which came back together in January. And since that agreement to review these structures, there have been significant challenges with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it clearly shows that now more than ever we need organisations not right across our partnership and also within our local authority to work together. So that Community Safety Partnership now provides the multi-agency mechanism by which local programmes are developed and commissioned, and awareness campaigns are delivered, and that information is then shared between all of the partners. County lines is definitely an issue that requires agencies to work in that coordinated way to identify and safeguard vulnerable young people and ensure that that activity is taking place in services. Everything from preventative work, such as the Violence Reduction Partnership funded projects that are going through the CSP at the moment, right through to the multi-agency coordinated outreach with young people, along with our colleagues in the police and the fire service. But also the awareness raising, including the training needs that were identified, and these are going to be key future actions, alongside target action with the police, children's social care, education providers and our youth justice partners. Really good to see that the task group highlighted the work of the Violence Reduction Partnership. Our Community Safety Partnership have recently submitted local projects and proposals to ensure that St Helens communities are receiving the additional support in engagement and mentoring programmes, which I know was one of the things that was highlighted. And it ensures that local community groups are also part of the wider partnership in engaging young people and identifying young people who are at risk, because it's got to work with our community and our voluntary sector too. So we'll share that learning from the Violence Reduction Partnership work, and we welcome the additional support that the partnership has provided to our local education awareness, including working with the St Giles project referenced in the report. Please pass on my thanks to all of the members that are involved in this piece of scrutiny work, and I promise to bring updates on the implementations of the recommendations of the report, and crucially I will be asking and tasking officers across all areas of the council mentioned in this report to respond to the recommendations and prepare a detailed response and action plan from each area. And lastly, I just want to say a very specific thank you to Councillor Sweeney for her work as Chair of Community Safety Scrutiny in the last municipal year. It's been wonderful for me to work with a Chair who was so passionate and knowledgeable about the area itself, challenging in a really constructive way to help me inform future policy and practice, and wholeheartedly dedicated to making St Helens a safer place for our residents. It's been a really good experience working with you, Michelle.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Councillor Charlton.
Thanks, Chair. Again, can I just pass on my thanks to Councillor Sweeney and the panel for the hard work that they've undertaken doing this report. It's quite strange because a couple of years ago, none of us probably really understood what county lines actually meant, and now it's something that almost, unfortunately, trips off our tongue. I just wanted to pick on a few of the points which are pertinent to social care that have been highlighted in this report. I'd like to thank you for acknowledging the work that's being done by Catch 22 and obviously the schools in tackling this issue. Going forward, we've now got our Edge of Care service up and running, so that will be something that we'll be able to assist with partners in tackling this issue. One of the things that the report highlights, and you know, it'd be remiss of me not to raise it, is about children's homes in the borough. It's something that I do talk regularly about. We've got 31 homes in the borough. Of those, 2 are our own local authority run homes that are Ofsted registered. But unfortunately, we have a problem with southern investors or investors from wherever thinking that our houses are cheap, so they decide to buy them up, place vulnerable young people in the houses. Young people, as I've said before, are a commodity. You know, we can charge up to £8,000 a week for somebody to actually receive quite a poor service and not be looked after, but just placed somewhere and expected to get on with it. So, you know, we have a problem with that in St Helens, and that is something that in my portfolio we are trying to address. And we are looking at it, we are aware of it. These young people are far away from home, they're vulnerable and they're open to exploitation. We know that, you know, we know that that's an issue, and we have a responsibility to tackle that issue. You know, as the report highlights, this is an abhorrent crime. You know, it's causing long-term effects to our children and young people, not just mentally, but like Councillor Sweeney highlighted, you know, it's criminalising young people and affecting their future prospects. So in terms of the recommendation on page 21.8, that the report be taken to the Children's Improvement Board, I have asked that it goes on to the agenda for the Children's Improvement Board in October. We've already had a presentation at the Corporate Parenting Forum, but we again will revisit this because this is something that needs to be kept on the agenda, and like Councillor Bell and Councillor Sweeney have said, you know, it's something that we need to be letting people know that this is happening. It's important that we keep it in people's minds, so as a community we can start tackling it. So I just want to thank the panel for an excellent report.
A quick response to that. One of the things that was identified again really good practice by St Helens. There is no, sadly, duty for these homes to be regulated as such, and something that we were reassured again that our local authority knows where they all are, knows each one of them, and they do visits. So again, another area of good practice despite the challenges we face, putting our children first. So thanks again for that, and thanks Cabinet.
Thanks Councillor Sweeney, and thanks to everyone who took part in that report. Cabinet, are the recommendations in that report in front of us agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thanks Councillor Sweeney. Item 5 is performance report Q1 2020-21. Councillor Bond.
Thanks, Chair. The performance report for the first quarter of the current municipal year assesses the council's performance during a period of unprecedented challenge due to COVID-19. The impact of the pandemic is reflected across all council priorities, with the overwhelming majority of indicators now being impacted to varying degrees. Now more than ever, robust and appropriate performance management arrangements are required to enable effective decision making and the delivery of the council's desired outcomes across Borough and the communities therein. The indicators contained within the Q1 report are those which were reported to Cabinet over the course of 2019-2020. These indicators have now been recast against the 6 priorities of the draft council plan. It's acknowledged that this realignment, brings to light a certain imbalance in the number of measures reported against individual priorities and gaps within certain areas in terms of indicators required to measure successive progress against those priorities. More work has and is being done to provide balance. The onset of the pandemic initially impeded the council's ability to set meaningful targets and review its ranges of measures. The performance scorecard highlights those measures where targets have been subject to review. With the above in mind, the report is presented with the caveat that work to deliver a step change in the council's approach to performance management is ongoing over the course of Q2. And this includes a whole-scale review of the council's performance management framework in line with, amongst other things, the council's plans for reset and recovery for COVID-19. Full alignment of the new performance management framework to the priorities of the council plan, and a full review of performance targets in light of the impacts of COVID-19. As with recent reporting, the performance report has 6 priority sections, each containing a summary of progress in terms of delivery against priority, a performance scorecard showing performance against indicators in the year to date, the direction of travel, and comparative performance, with a summary of performance of what is going well, what is proving challenging, and the action being taken to improve. Cabinet should take note of the comparative quartile performance that does not relate to performance within the quarter which has been impacted by COVID, but reflects the St Helens position for the indicator against a comparator group where the last nationally verified data was published, and that's largely for the period 2018 to 19. That's just a caveat on the comparative positions. So the recommendation is therefore for Cabinet to note the current performance position, work with the appropriate executive directors to address specific areas for performance improvement, work with appropriate executive directors in agreeing proposals for the future range of appropriate performance measures and indicators to be presented in Cabinet reports and their respective targets. I'll be passing responsibility for this key area to Councillor Gomez-Ashbourne from now on, and I want to put on record my thanks to all the officers who design, review, operate and contribute to the performance reports. The quality of the information and support that I've received since May 2019 has been peerless. Thank you in particular to Chris Collins for his knowledge, dedication and professionalism as Performance Strategy and Information Manager. That concludes my commentary on the item, and therefore I formally move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Are there any questions or comments from colleagues? Councillor Bell.
Sorry, just had a problem with my getting my camera on then. I do apologise. So in respect to my area, you'll see from the report that the Q1 period has seen a rise in the recorded reports of hate crime to different agencies, despite a slight dip during April. And I have discussed that before in other meetings. We know that hate crime is traditionally underreported, and we're seeking to address this through a number of work streams, including the hashtag Better Than That and the No Place for hate campaigns. So by raising awareness, we hope to improve reporting and tackle hate crime as it comes forward, promoting a robust response with our partners in the Community Safety Partnership. There's also been, that you'll see from the report, there's been a big rise in the incidence of antisocial behaviour during quarter one. But again, there's a need for context in this as it is linked to local lockdown. So an estimated 50 to 60% of calls during that period related directly to adherence to COVID-19 regulations. Given that this has been an unprecedented 3 months, comparisons to levels of local antisocial behaviour in previous quarters and in previous years is actually quite problematic, as non-compliance with social distancing and social gathering restrictions would not previously have been considered as antisocial. So the figures in themselves present a challenge. And to be honest, I would expect this to rise again, given that government is currently encouraging people to report neighbour activity as part of the new local activity restrictions due to COVID. So I don't think we will see this slowing down. But to try and tackle it, we're working with Merseyside Police on a joint response, including providing additional funding to resources for Merseyside Police, specifically around outreach. So the outreach services have continued to target specific locations. And we've also recruited a new post of an antisocial behaviour officer who started in August, and that's bringing us some additional capacity to deal with things going forward. But we're going to have to monitor these rises really closely and tackle the issues as they happen. And to be honest, it would be a job that would be made much easier for all of our partners on the Community Safety Partnership if funding was available to meet the capacity and the demand, but unfortunately we're not finding that at the moment. So finally, in regards to homelessness, I was really pleased to report that during quarter one, the council's homeless team were able to meet the needs of homeless households, both single and families, through the provision of temporary accommodation to protect them during that COVID-19 initial period, which, you know, it was the all-in programme. And the team have worked really, really hard during that period. They've been really successful at finding accommodation solutions, creative solutions for homeless households at quite an early stage, including support from hostel provisions to be COVID prepared and secure. However, I would give a word of caution here, because a lot of the additional resource that we've put into this area is grant funded. If that money isn't renewed by government, then, you know, we're going to be facing the same situation in 12 months where we have increased pressures to the budget. And if you add to this the potential lifting, well, the actual lifting of the ban on evictions, this is going to be a very different picture going forward if we are not funded appropriately to maintain this level of service provision. And we know that now that that eviction ban has been lifted, the demand within the housing area is going to go through the roof. So yeah, I just wanted Cabinet to be aware of that going forward into the next reporting period. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bell. Councillor Bowden.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, really. You'll note from the report the lack of data around waste collection, and whilst waste collection and recycling was severely impacted by COVID and the lockdown, and of course we're looking to learn the lessons from that, it's worth pointing out that vital household waste collections were maintained through the period. Unfortunately, though, at this time it's difficult to measure or benchmark performance due to the lack of data from the National Waste Data Flow System and the Merseyside Recycling Waste Authority, but I'm hoping that data will be available as soon as possible to give us a more accurate picture the next time we report. In terms of the other indicator I'd like to highlight, which is around fly tipping, during COVID, the increase in fly tipping was being put down to the closure of the recycling centres and the suspension of the bulky rubbish collection service due to the pandemic, and those decisions were taken in view of maintaining the safety of crews and those working at those centres. However, that poor performance did continue into June once the majority of waste collection centres had reopened. So we've got to be clear here. Fly tipping is solely the responsibility of those selfish, criminal and unthinking individuals who undertake it. And sadly, sometimes the willingness of people who see and use a cheap option to get rid of old furniture or unwanted items without properly checking just where those items are going to end up. To say otherwise, Leader, is simply an excuse to excuse poor and antisocial behaviour. And of course, we welcome the recent reopening of Tasker Terrace and the use of a bookable appointment system. And again, we're going to see what impact that has on fly tipping. So if the issues do persist, we will be looking to use more stringent enforcement action in future. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Gomez Asprom.
Thank you. Yeah, there's just a few points. Some have already been covered by Councillor Bowden then. I've never understood fly tipping. It's like scratching your own car. You are making the community that you live in better, worse. And it's only you that really suffers from it. And it's always that key point. There is no excuse. So whatever you think your excuse might be, it doesn't exist. When we get these quarterly reports, anything that flagged up as red should always be interrogated. What I would say in this case is, I would say this was far from a normal quarter. And so there are things in there that have been ultimately a result of the COVID response. So things such as business vacancies, bins, which Councillor Bowden has touched on, council tax collection. It weren't right to pursue people for those non-payments in that climate. So that was the right thing to do. Staff sickness is another one. It was the responsible thing to do to allow those staff to self-isolate and be off if needed. One of the things we need to look at going forward, and the Tories in Rainford always offer to ring the Prime Minister and convey a message if we would like them to sometimes. And so maybe they can convey this one. With the entire withdrawal of furlough and there being no plan in place for any sort of interim support, we are going to see a much bigger impact on people not being able to pay council tax and bills ultimately as they end up losing the job, and business vacancies increasing, I imagine, because the government have not put a plan in place that deals with the aftermath of withdrawing that programme. So whilst, again, the Chancellor has said something this afternoon which makes it sound like furlough 2.0 might be happening somewhere, which is nice of them again to listen to the Labour opposition. It's far from confirmed, and we need to make sure we push for that because it will be devastating. Thousands of people have already lost their jobs. They just don't know it yet in light of not having a government support scheme. So it's an interesting quarter, and it'll be interesting to compare it to the next quarter, but we can only do what we can do, and the government have left us with a 20 million quid black hole at the minute, which they said they would cover at all costs and haven't. So that will ultimately impact going forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, can I ask the recommendations and report agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you, everyone. Item 6 is a peer review one council update. Councillor Gomez Asprom.
Thank you. Bear with me, just rejigging my screen so I can see the agenda. There we go. Yeah, so just over 2 weeks into post, so even by my standards, it would be hard-faced to try and claim credit for any of this. So firstly, I would like to say thank you to Kate for bringing it forward, and thanks to the Labour group for supporting such a visionary way forward. This is the point of what we're doing. And part of this building back better will to see, well, what have we always done and what do we need to do going forward? So based on this report, it provides an update on the delivery of the One Council programme, which incorporates the actions and the recommendations from the LGA peer review and culture review carried out in early 2019. The LGA key recommendations are contained in the report and are focused on, but not limited to, enhancing senior officer capacity, which means we can deliver our priorities, ensuring constructive performance, challenge and robust performance management systems across the organisation, including ensuring the improvement of children's services remains a priority, which it is, which we've discussed tonight in great detail. Articulating a vision and a set of priorities for the borough that are widely owned and clearly understood. developing a capital investment funding strategy that takes into account the council's priorities, including regeneration of our town centres and village centres, and economic investment goals, and developing clear priorities for modernisation, followed by a roadmap for delivery with sufficient resources to ensure success. Progress has been variable to date due to a limited organisational capacity and the absence of an effective management and governance programme. This is now being addressed by the recently appointed Chief Executive, together with the executive leadership team. To support this, several governance recommendations are contained in this report at paragraph 8. An updated roadmap of delivery against these work streams is also attached at Appendix A. The One Council Modernisation Programme was always planned to be an organic programme. It is also now timely to integrate the ambitions outlined in the One Council programme with the Council's Reset and Recovery programme, which is why, as a council and a Labour-run council, we've given it an increased focus this year. As a result of the COVID pandemic, to support wider fundamental transformation of the organisation and service delivery aligned to the achievement of council and borough priorities. I've already mentioned the government have left us with what is close to a £20 million gap going forward this next year. In the next 12 months, the council will not look like we have known it for all the time we have known it. That doesn't mean it's better or worse. It means it will be different, and it's our duty to make sure that that works for residents where it can. To support this, additional peer support has been agreed with the LGA and will take place on the 28th of September in an agreed recovery renewal panel. This session will reflect on what the council has achieved and learned in responding to COVID-19 and the pandemic. You only have to look at our community response to see how fantastic that was, even to surrounding areas and nationwide. To discuss with peers the challenges and opportunities COVID-19 has presented for the council and the local area and our local communities. Consider the steps the council wishes to take towards recovery and renewal, which is key. That's the bit we need to get right to underpin everything going forward. And to help identify a series of actions the council may wish to take, as well as identifying further support and good practice from across the entire sector. The recommendations are listed at point 2 in the report, and I'm happy to respond or defer however I can based on my new timing role. They're my excuses, so I'd happily answer questions if you can, and would ask everyone to note the points at point 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, are the recommendations in the report agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Item 7, replacement of the council's HR and payroll systems. Councillor Bond.
Thanks, Chair. As with the previous report from SEVDA, I've inherited this from Councillor Grocott, so I want to thank her for the work that she's done on the subject and make sure she gets the credit for it rather than me. So thanks, Kate. The report seeks approval to 1, source a replacement for the current in-house HR system, 2, extend the contract to the council's payroll system and improve system capabilities to support an integrated HR system, and 3, to confirm years 1 and 2 funding from the Transformation Reserve. So the One People strand of the One Council Transformation Strategy identified the need for a replacement HR system. HR systems should be automated, easily accessible, interactive and aligned with business, which matches employee experiences with their own technology outside of work. The current HR systems are in-house products built on the Lotus Notes platform, developed with little investment from as far back as 2001. The system is labour intensive from the perspective of processing, and it relies on significant manual intervention. Consequently, digital flow is limited, and interestingly, bearing in mind what Councillor Uddin was talking about, paper remains a fundamental to many of the HR processes. So soft market testing was completed last year, focusing on the Zelis HR system, UBW HR system and Microsoft Dynamics HR. This soft market testing demonstrated the potential benefits that could be realised by the council to the purchase of an improved and integrated HR system. A new HR system would not only provide increased access for managers, but also allow access to HR information and processes for employees. Access to a cloud-based system will be via a web-based platform, accessible both from council and personal mobile technology. Procurement rules and guidance will be followed in relation to the selection and award to a supplier. Once a preferred supplier for the HR system has been identified, a Cabinet report will be brought later in the year for approval to award the contract. The payroll system is procured via Zelis, and the contract is due to expire at the end of March next year. This is a vital system, and regardless of any additional HR system procurement, this contract needs to be extended from next April. The current payroll contract value is circa £60,000 per annum. The extension of this contract would operate in terms of its length and the capabilities offered by the system to support an integrated HR/payroll system going forward. The additional one-off cost of the payroll improvements would approximately be £80,000 over 2 phases to be completed in 2020. The circa 60k per annum ongoing annual costs for the payroll system software are already contained within existing budgets. The improvements proposed to the system are unlikely to result in a reduction of the annual cost. From the soft market testing, indicative HR system costs are estimated to be approximately 250k in year 1 and 200k in year 2. The annual costs of the software are in the region of £100,000 a year, with one-off project management and startup costs of 150k in year 1 and 100k in year 2. With such a large workforce, a robust and up-to-date HR and payroll system is essential. Ongoing annual costs will be found from reductions in staffing posts, plus additional non-staffing savings, which will be determined over time as operational efficiencies are identified across the council. So, funding will be considered as part of the wider programme of modernisation, and funding options, including the transformation reserve or capitalisation, will be considered in addition to existing budgets for the payroll system. We need to have these systems operating at an optimum level and up to date because of the size of the organisation. It's a false economy not to have that in place. So in closing then, I've said what I wanted to say about why we need the systems. The cost of them are transparent for all large organisations. So I move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Any questions or comments? Are the recommendations in the report agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you, and thanks, Councillor Grocott, for your work on that, as well as Councillor Bond said. Item 8, test and trace update. Councillor Burns.
Thanks very much, Chair. The paper before you is to note the decisions already made by administrative or delegated executive decision to implement the model for delivery for test and trace to support outbreak management in St Helens. We're bringing this paper as we are aware decisions have been made at speed so that we're in a position to ensure resilience for outbreak management within the borough, but in order to ensure complete transparency of these decisions, that we have described our model as set out in the paper for your approval. The background to this is it was nationally mandated for upper tier local authorities to have outbreak management plans and governance in place that cover 7 specific areas. These are care homes and schools, high risk places and communities, local testing capacity, contact tracing in complex settings, data integration, vulnerable people and local boards. Our main function at local authority level is to manage the consequence of outbreaks. Whilst for St Helens we have received over £1.3 million of funding to manage outbreaks, this is one-off funding, and due to the nature of COVID-19, as we're all finding out, we are not sure how long we will need a team in place to deliver effective management. In order to get the most effective and efficient way of managing outbreaks locally, we have developed an integrated model with some delivery within a Cheshire and Mersey team to do a lot of the heavy lifting for single complex cases, and then with local management focusing on outbreaks and the subsequent contact tracing, environmental health support for businesses and infection control support for care homes and schools. The current financial commitment is for £384,382, and this is currently 1-year costs for staffing with some IT requirements that will cover the full life of the programme. We need to ensure that we have a skilled team in place. While we don't know how long we will need staff in place to support the testing and tracing, we have left scope for 2-year funding plus additional support for campaigns and any unknown consequent management. With a potential second peak on the horizon though, it's important to mention that this budget will no doubt be very quickly exhausted. Since writing this paper and preparing it for Cabinet, we have been subject to additional lockdown measures, of course, along with the rest of the Liverpool City region due to the rise in rates locally. And at this point, we do have to question the government's handling of this whole situation. Yes, it is unprecedented. Yes, it's worldwide, and we are all living with it day by day. However, the people of this country and this borough look to the government for advice and direction during times like these. And I'm afraid to say that the advice and direction has been confusing, unclear, and quite frankly, waffle. The Prime Minister promised that the test and trace system would be a game changer. Now, we all know how that has ended up. This Labour Council have had to battle for mobile testing units. Our Labour MPs Connor and Murray have been supporting that fight in Westminster as we try to respond to outbreaks in our borough, such as the ones in Earlstown and Newton, Eccleston Park, and more recently in Rainford. A game changer? Well, I'm not sure, but it seems as though the government have changed their mind, as yesterday the Prime Minister said that the test and trace system has very little or nothing to do with the spread or the transmission of COVID-19. Certainly contradictory and certainly confusing. And then in the Prime Minister's speech this week, the audacity to blame the public for the rise. We in St Helens Borough have had a substantial rise in cases, reflecting in the fact, of course, that we've had to subject to extra lockdown measures with the rest of the city region. Is that entirely our fault? Were the residents of Earlstown and Newton completely clear on the guidance from government? Were the residents of Eccleston Park too? People in St Helens are confused because of the unclear direction from government. The government continues to be contradictory. People don't know if they're coming or going. 1 minute the message is go out, eat, enjoy yourself, fill your boots. The next minute we're told it's the people's fault and we are threatened with fines. But of course, Dominic Cummings is exempt from such fines, of course. This Labour-run council will continue to do all it can to protect the people of St Helens Borough in spite of the lack of support from government. Our council officers, led superbly by Kath O'Dwyer, will continue to support our residents and respond to the demands brought on us by the virus. Directors of Public Health across Cheshire and Mersey have worked collaboratively, and internally we have worked closely with services in environmental health, within the Police Directorate, with infection prevention control, within the Cloningham Commission Group, the CCG, and Contact Cares to develop a robust system to protect our population. Sue Forster, our Director of Public Health, and the team work day and night to implement plans of action to help to keep us on fighting the virus. When this pandemic first started, St Helens came together, and with partners across the borough, we had local and national recognition for the way we looked after one another. Local businesses, sports clubs, charities, the local authority ran by this Labour group, voluntary sector, care sector, friends and neighbours, all came together. True partnership working. And I'm sure we will all come together once again to look after each other and protect our most vulnerable, so we can see the rates finally come down and we can get back to some sort of normality. With that, I ask you to note the decisions and approve the model of delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns, and I absolutely second everything that you've said. Councillor Gomez-Aspron.
Thank you. Where do you start with this? I don't think the government could have messed it up anymore if they sat down and planned to do it badly. That's the really worrying part. And anyone who knows me will know I'm quick to level criticism if it's needed. But likewise, we need to give out praise when it is. And locally, the only parts of the response that are working are the stuff coordinated locally by our local health teams, the council, the CCG, and the wider support network. We were on the ball with the local restrictions coming in that earlier in that week. We'd recommended from our outbreak board meeting that it was about the time to start taking it seriously and making sure that we had further restrictions in place to protect the public. The test and trace policy has nationally been a real issue. They tried to have a dabble at doing it themselves and got it wrong, and then they tried to commission 2 private companies to have a crack at doing it and did it wrong, and was then trying to give away a load of private information to those companies, which would have been the consequence. And then they've sort of taken it back in-house. So we're sat waiting. So again, this report means that locally we're going to step in and do the right thing because they can't do it properly nationally. The testing policy has been ridiculous. We will all know. I imagine we've all got relatives who've had to been through, because I represent Newton and Willows. I live in a town where the cases were the second highest in the UK after Bolton. And that wasn't through people being flippant. It was through people not really understanding what to do. And as soon as it got a foothold in community transmission, ripped through certain groups and made the case number rocket. So combined with that, we were getting people with reference to give tests in Doncaster, Dundee, Aberdeen. Some of them were 6 and 7 hour drives. Some of them were an hour flight. So who's going to go and get these tests? You can't do it. So if you're self-employed and that's where you're at, and your decision is, do I go to work tomorrow and pay the bills, or do I do what is right and self-isolate, knowing that I can't get a confirmed negative or positive result and don't know what to do and will go hungry this week now because of that? With all the best intent of the world, they will go to work because they've got people who rely on them. And that doesn't mean they're being reckless. It means they're trying to get through for their family and do the best that they can without the proper information. So I think the national situation has been a fiasco. It ripped through adult social care and care homes early on. And that's the way we're heading again with the way that the community transmission is going. So I welcome this report. I don't know how many times we have to say to government, let us do it locally because we do it better than you try to cock up nationally. So give us the resource to do it. So I welcome the report. I would like to thank the public health teams. Those outbreak management boards aren't easy. They're some of the most difficult decisions I've got to make in my 9 years on council. And thank you for the support from our MPs of Conor and Mary for raising that at a national level. The mobile testing has worked, but it doesn't compensate for the national farce, which is the testing system. So I can only hope that somebody fixes that. It's all well and good Boris Johnson shouting we're going to get 500,000 tests a day. If nobody can take them tests because they can't drive 7 hours to Inverness, then what's the point? So welcome to the report. Thank you for the presentation and well done to our local public health teams.
Councillor Bell.
Hello, thank you for bringing this report, Councillor Burns. It's really good to see where things are up to, and I just wanted to echo your frustration, and I know the frustration that many officers feel where we are receiving guidance with no clarification as to the details of those guidance. And we've had real issues with that in licensing, and licensing have been on the front line of delivering a lot of this guidance and recommendations to businesses, to licensed premises, to taxi drivers, and we will receive, you know, a new rule and then be told, oh well, we'll follow it up with guidance. Well, actually no, we need the guidance first, because immediately what happens is our officers are then dealing with an influx of businesses and license holders saying, well, what does this actually mean? And that is the problem that we've got. The guidance is confusing when it does come through. It's difficult for communities to interpret that. It's nigh on impossible for our officers to have that interpretation nailed down because they're just not given the time. They're just not given the time. So yeah, I completely agree and echo the sentiments that you've made. Thank the public health team and yourself for everything that you're doing, and also thank, you know, the other services within the council that are working really hard on that response, including licensing and you know, town centre management officers like Gary Maddox. So, you know, thank you to all the staff for really busting a gut on this.
Thank you. Councillor Macaulay.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I just want to echo what everybody else is saying, really, and personal thanks to Councillor Burns for some information today. I was contacted, Councillor Burns, today, some information for a community group who was trying to follow government advice, but getting conflicting advice off different agencies within the government. So I'm glad that we've got a good response locally, and it's just a pity, as Councillor Gomez said, national government were following suit with that good practice. But that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to put on record my personal thanks to Councillor Burns and the rest of the team for what they're doing locally.
Thanks, Councillor Macaulay. Any more questions or comments from anyone?
David.
Councillor Quinn?
Yeah, sorry, David, it won't let me type in now. Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Burns for that report, which is very, very detailed, but very accurate. I think we all have the same frustrations in relation to the government and how it's handled this situation. I just wanted to highlight that Councillor Burns did mention care homes and Councillor Gomez did. And yes, we did lose some very, very high numbers, 276 in total we lost in homes, but not all with COVID. They were lower. What I'd like to put on record there is the tremendous work that went on from all our partners, be it social care, hospital trust, CCG, in ensuring, and the voluntary sector, in ensuring that none of our care homes ever went without PPE. Now, even the government couldn't guarantee that. They kept floating on about it and blabbing that it was all there in the background, but they didn't go out and deliver. What I can say is, if a home in St Helens needed it, they got it, and no home ran out of it. I just hope that if we are going to hit this second wave, which looks like it, that government does learn some of the lessons that other people have had to learn from the last wave and continue to learn going forward. I'm not holding out much hope where the government's concerned, because as Councillor Burns said, it is waffle and waffle. And if you saw last night's presentation or speech by the Prime Minister, well, I mean, that said it all. His language, instead of speaking in plain English to the people of this country to get the message out that was needed, it didn't. It didn't. I do think he thinks he's on the stage, and it's a theatrical that he's doing. Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, and there's no dress rehearsal for a lot of them when they get COVID. And we have 40,000 now that there was no dress rehearsal. They got COVID, they was taken to hospital, and sadly, no matter how much work went in, they died. So I really do want the Prime Minister to sit up and realise what his responsibilities are. It's not being party political, and neither should it be. This is a matter of life and death. But where party politics do come in is when they do not respond, and yet they are the elected government of this country. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Quinn, and thanks, Councillor Burns and officers who put that report together. Thank you for bringing it. I want to echo everything that has been said so far. As Chair of the Outbreak Management Board, Councillor Gomez Aspron said it right when he said it's a very difficult board to be a part of, because we're making tough decisions. I just want to say that to sum up, you know, residents and businesses are doing their bit. Overwhelmingly, they're doing their bit. We are doing our bit. Whether that's through licensing and enforcement, as Councillor Bell said, public health, offering what support we can to business. Our MPs, Conor McGinn and Mary Rimmer, are doing a fantastic job lobbying for us, and the Outbreak Management Board is running really, really well in difficult circumstances. And we're doing our best to get clear information out as much as we can and as often as we can. Government needs to do their bit, and it is obvious to everyone, party politics aside, it is obvious to everyone that the government are not doing their bit at the moment. They need to announce urgent support for business. We've got the furlough scheme due to end next month as well. They need to address that, and they need to get a grip on testing and track and trace. We were promised a world-beating system by the 1st of June, and that's a long time ago now. So I absolutely second everything that's been said, and I thank you for that report, Councillor Burns. Does Cabinet agree with the recommendations in that report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Item 9 is proposals to continue the pause programme in St Helens. Councillor Charlton.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the proposal that's there before you is for Cabinet to approve 50% of match funding to enable the continuation of the pause programme from October 2020. So that'll be for an additional 21 months. Many of you know about the PAUSE programme, but for those that don't, it works with women who have experienced or are at repeated risk of pregnancy that results in children having to be removed from the care, and it helps to mitigate the negative emotional impact of this cycle on the women. It also reduces the demand of volume and cost placed on statutory social work services. So the report that you've got before you sets out the model of service delivery and explains the work that takes place to deliver the outcomes. I think one of the reasons why PAUSE is important, thinking about it is about the women, but also about children and young people. So it aims to stop children and young people coming into local authority care. You know, we've got 493 children that we look after. You know, and sometimes it can cause damaging consequences to children and young people being taken into care. So, you know, PAUSE really is important. And I just want to share a few of the outcomes. So in terms of the estimated benefits to cost ratios, PAUSE programme, it's £4.50 per £1 that's spent over a number of years. On a local level, the impacts for the women that have engaged in the programme have been really impressive. You know, women on the core programme from cohorts 1 and 2, none of them have become pregnant, and given that that's one of the main aims, that's really great. It highlights that taking a break from pregnancy enables women to pause and break that destructive cycle and make positive changes to their lives. So in St Helens, we prioritise local women who have been in the care system or have been exposed to care proceedings with their own children. I think one of the other important things to highlight is the rates of engagement are consistently high, so 85%. So for this group, that's particularly impressive, given that the history of the women is that there's been poor engagement with services. So by engaging in PAUSE, they're then engaging with health, housing, the financial situation's improving. So there's a bigger picture to the engagement in PAUSE. PAUSE also provides training to the wider partnership around reflective practice and effective ways in which to engage families. So really, all I want to say is today is based on the outcomes delivered for both personal, for the women, children and families, and the financial level, that the amount of investment, I'd like to invite Cabinet to accept the proposal. Thanks, Chair. If anybody's got any questions.
Thanks, Councillor Charlton. Councillor Quinn. You're on mute if you're trying to speak, Councillor Quinn.
Sorry, keeps jumping the screen. Sorry about that, Leader.
Okay.
I was fortunate to be invited to the first programme of PAUSE that St Helens ran, and that was government funded. And I've got to say, it's a truly remarkable project. To see the young ladies when they come in and see them when they actually complete the course, there's just no comparison. Some of the young ladies spoke to us and told us of the circumstances that they'd lived in and what their life experiences had been, and I was truly humbled. But at the end of the course, when I went to their first graduation, to see those young ladies that had self-esteem, they had confidence, Lots of them had found what they wanted to do in employment, working in a vets, working in shops, whatever. They all had a single purpose themselves, and yet at the beginning they were so down and downtrodden, and didn't think they were worth anything. I think Councillor Charlton has explained the cost, you know, the price of the scheme, and the value to it. But believe you me, to see young ladies from St Helens develop and grow in self-esteem as much as that first programme did, it's worth £1 million. It is truly worth £1 million. To give them the opportunity not to have children that they may not be able to care for, that in itself has saved not only them the pressure, but the authority, the pressure and the cost, but also the impact on those children that we do have in care. And we know how that does affect them. We're now going into our third programme, and I'm very fortunate to say I do visit each programme, and it grows from strength to strength, and we should be proud that we have got this project running in St Helens. So I would have no reservations in supporting whatever Councillor Charlton needs for this scheme to continue, none whatsoever. It's a credit to the authority, what it does for young ladies that may not have had the opportunities we've had.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Completely agree. Are there any more questions or comments from colleagues? Are the recommendations in the report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And thanks, Councillor Charlton. Item 10 is local plan. Councillor Macaulay.
Thanks, Leader. Colleagues, as you will realise, reading the report in front of you, we have reached the next milestone in the development of a local plan. Before I go through the report, I think it is really important for us to reflect on the purpose of the local plan. The plan is our blueprint for the future of the borough for the next 15 years. This plan will help us make sure that the whole borough of St Helens is vibrant, attractive and prosperous. A borough where people can access skilled local jobs and have quality, affordable places to live. A place where 59% will be green and pleasant, and where our 952 hectares of beautiful parks and gardens will be treasured and protected. A place that commits to developing brownfield first and investing in the right infrastructure at the right time. A place where we will all be proud to be from. This COVID crisis that we're in and the unprecedented impact on our local economy has meant that the need to support economic development is more crucial than ever. Coupled with the government's proposed radical planning reforms mean that time is of the essence if we are to protect our communities from developers challenging our current land supply. You have the assurance that we have checked and double checked. We have considered all factors and opportunities, and now we have a plan that provides the right balance between ambition and protection. We have explored the opportunities that our new and exciting partnership with ECF will offer us. We are reassured that this partnership will make sure the plan becomes a reality. The local plan and the ECF partnership will together ensure the regeneration of our town centres and the development of our brownfield land. This plan, together with the construction charter we adopted last year, will also create well-paid construction jobs for our residents, local procurement and supply chains during construction projects. The community impact assessment identifies that the local plan contains a comprehensive range of policies whose aim it is to improve the quality of life in St Helens, The policies state that we will work with our health wellbeing partners to promote public health, reduce health inequalities and maximising opportunities for people to lead healthy and active lifestyles. Use our planning powers to improve access to a choice of homes and jobs that meet the needs of the area. Ensure the provision of safe and attractive public and green spaces, green spaces that will serve new and existing communities and promote social cohesion and mental well-being. Encourage people to be physically active by promoting opportunities for walking, cycling, outdoor recreation and sport. Ensure the provision and location of local facilities and infrastructure, including schools, public transport, health and other services are in the right place at the right time. Manage air quality and pollution and encourage measures to achieve affordable warmth and, very importantly, tackle climate change. The St Helens Borough Local Plan can achieve this for our residents. We must submit the plan so we can create a healthy, vibrant borough. Every area in the country must have a local plan, and before this government wipes away the controls of local people over what happens in their area, we must ensure our local plan is adopted. We would be remiss as politicians not to provide our communities with certainty about where development will take place, to protect our communities for ambitious developers and to ensure we make St Helens a place of opportunity for all of our people. I therefore recommend to Council that, in accordance with the resolution of Council, we submit our plan to the Secretary of State and allow an independent and robust examination of the public examination in public of the plan. I therefore ask members to approve the recommendations on page 20. But before I move to any questions or comments, I'd like to put on record my thanks to council officers, past and present, who have worked on this substantial piece of work over the past few years. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to move the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Macaulay. I absolutely second everything you've said there. Councillor Gomez-Aspron.
Thank you, Chair. Just to start, I would say, if you are somebody that stands for election to prevent new houses being built, either because you don't want to deny younger generations the opportunity to buy them, or because the sites that they are built on are near your house, then we're not on the same side. And I have no qualms in saying that. I do not agree fundamentally with what you stand for. The only reason I've been able to buy a house in the town I grew up in is because we've been very successful at regenerating former industrial sites, which means that the supply is kept up, the prices stay lower, and young people can stay. Anybody that advocates not building houses in their town and village is shafting those younger generations into not being able to afford to live there. It's very interesting. You see, I've got it there. The reason it's a 300-page document is because it's about more than Greenbelt. There's all sorts in there about protecting what we've got, regenerating our town centres, sustainable transport, biodiversity sites, heritage assets. There's loads in there. And if you've not actually read it, then you shouldn't really comment without actually seeing what's in there. I read the recent letter from the opposition in the St Helens Star. It reminded me very much of Boris Johnson's advice: go to work, don't go to work, stay at home, don't stay at home, stand up, sit down, don't stand up, don't sit down. In that, they listed a load of things that they wanted that are totally undeliverable, and then said at the end, well, actually, we've commissioned somebody and the figure you had all along is right. After 4 years of saying we don't need new houses, make your mind up. Some key statistics about this plan. So if they're watching this, you can come and challenge me on these anyway. 72% of every single house that are built between now and 2035 will be built on brownfield sites, because we are good at recycling brownfield. That number could be higher if the government hadn't cut the contaminated land remediation grants. When I had the portfolio for that years ago, we had shelf-ready schemes and we're one of the best in the country. So when the national pot would get released, we'd get 60 or 70% of it because we were so good at securing funding for those schemes. Now, bear with me, because you don't have to be Carol Vorderman to keep up with this. I'm certainly not. I hate maths. But We know we can fit 5,550 houses on brownfield over the next 15 years. If you use the opposition figure, which they have said they know we have to build and have commissioned it independently, we know they're saying they want 450 houses built a year. So 450 times 15 equals 6,750 houses. That is a number larger than 5,550 houses, which means they accept that we have to put 1,500 houses on Greenbelt because there's nowhere else for it to go. What they seem to be saying is, well, keep it away from us in the town centres and go up into tower blocks. Well, no, apartments have a place in modern society, but we need to aspire to a greater standard of living for the public here. 7% of the borough is already parks and open spaces that isn't Greenbelt, so that's a figure that needs to be considered. You need to be, or they need to be careful what they wish for, begging for this white paper review. That will remove almost all local say and doesn't remove this condition to have a valid local plan. So it's easy being a Tory-led opposition, and whether they're whatever shade of blue they are, they need to be honest with the people when they're telling them the misinformation that they're giving out. The few things I'd sum up on is no plan or a lack of a valid plan means uncontrolled development. The real irony is some of the sites that these opposition groups are protesting about would be better protected once the plan is adopted by putting them into phase 2 as safeguarded. There are only 10 sites being proposed in phase 1, which delivers that gap I've spoke about between brownfield and what else we need to do. The last thing is the local plan isn't a planning application. It's a local plan to direct development. Every single site has to come back for planning, assuming the government don't change the rules and remove local say. And all the 10 sites are privately owned. So when people say you're destroying green space, people are proposing their own land to be built on, and out of that we get some public green space back because we can build it into the estate like we did on the Vulcan. So just to sum up, I am for building houses. I am for providing houses for younger generations. I am for providing a mix of housing, both affordable and aspirational, because it gets people on the ladder. If you're not for any of that, I don't agree with you, and that's your choice. But at least be honest when you're misleading the public about the facts and figures you're telling them. So I totally support this. It's fantastic news, and the quicker we get on with it, the better. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gomez-Aspront. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Leader. I will be supporting the submission of the local plan, basically because it's going to help deliver the housing that St Helens needs. It's that simple. It's going to ensure that the brownfield land that's suitable for housing is brought forward and accommodates the majority of the housing requirement for the borough. It will help regenerate large areas of derelict land, as well as bringing forward a range of small and medium-sized sites that are going to create opportunities for home ownership and rental, as well as actually improving the appearance of localities for people. I want new housing to be well designed and address local housing need and include a range of types, tenures and sizes of homes in accordance to what we actually need in St Helens. And let's be honest, there's a real opportunity here to try and deliver housing for all sections of society, including families with children, older people and people with disabilities. Importantly, policies to provide for affordable housing, accessible and adaptable housing, as well as specialist and supported housing for the elderly are also included. Now, we've got long wait times at the moment for adapted properties on the housing lists that are suitable to meet the needs of our community, and people with disabilities have a right to expect access to decent quality adapted properties. Without the local plan, we're going to have less control over development in St Helens Borough, and we won't have the opportunity to provide for those who need it the most. The local plan will ensure that housing is delivered in the right locations, and it's going to ensure that the borough develops how we want it to. Now, I've lived in this borough practically my whole life. Most of my family live across the borough from Newton to West Park, from Rainford to Bold. My family live in the areas covered by the local plan, and the perception that politicians in this administration are somehow removed and not affected is completely untrue. The truth is that this Labour-run council has the needs of residents at its heart, and basic rights to suitable, fit-for-purpose modern housing is something that I don't want to compromise on, quite frankly. I want my children and grandchildren, hopefully one day, sorry kids if you're listening, to be able to live in this borough in good quality homes to either rent or buy. And I want older generations to live in accommodation that promotes active independence within our communities for as long as possible. We have a duty to the future generations of this borough in terms of housing. Keir Starmer said this week he wants Britain to be the best place to grow up and the best place to grow old in. Well, I want that for St Helens because I'm a Labour councillor with Labour values, and that aspiration starts with good quality housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Councillor Bowden.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, thank you, Chair. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Given my involvement in the local plan previously, I welcome this report today and strongly support both its content and its recommendations. I'll take this opportunity to highlight a couple of aspects of the report relevant to my current role and responsibilities. They're creating the opportunity to deliver housing for future generations and to bring back jobs and growth to the borough, along with the creation of a local plan, and wanting to see economic growth and better opportunities for our residents is not incompatible with supporting the tackling of climate change or protecting the environment, as some would rather simplistically have us believe. I want to just highlight a few areas that demonstrate the plan's contribution to the environment and tackling climate change. And I do hope that the Tory-led coalition that oppose what we wish to see happen will acknowledge this. The plans include measures to protect the value of trees, woodlands and hedgerows, and seeks to encourage tree planting and the enhancement of existing woodland. It seeks to protect and enhance the existing open space network and, where appropriate, expand it, as well as supporting the Council's ambitions for green flag status. It also assists the Council to deliver ambitious green infrastructure plans such as Bold Forest Park and Sankey Valley Park, and it does assist us, if adopted, to tackle climate change. Many of the detailed policies within the spatial strategy at the heart of the plan set out how development will take place across our borough and highlights our ambition to be as sustainable as possible. The policies set out within it will help us to improve air quality and make sustainable transport more achievable. And it supports provision of improved footpaths and cycle networks, which in turn will encourage people to make sustainable transport choices and travel choices, thereby reducing carbon and nitrogen emissions that benefit us all. The plan that this Labour Council is putting forward seeks to reduce emissions and deliver wide health improvements. It requires new development to ensure flood risk is both managed and mitigated. And the plan includes a set of criteria for determining applications that promote the use of renewable and low carbon energy development, making it clear to developers the scale of ambition. And all that is in this plan because we believe that we want to create a better borough for our community and future generations. It's not simply about one element that the opposition coalition have chose to focus on. It's about developing and building better. It's balanced, and it's balanced for our future, and I will be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay. Just to sum up, before we take the vote, we all have a responsibility to do all we can to make St Helens Borough the most prosperous, healthy, thriving place that it can be. And when I say we, I mean all councillors. We've got a duty to support the local economy, to encourage the provision of new, affordable homes for a generation who can't get on the property ladder, to attract and generate new jobs, and to bring brownfield land back into use improving existing urban areas, while also protecting the overwhelming amount of existing green belts, not to mention our outstanding parks and other open spaces. And Councillor Bowden just very neatly described in some detail the ways we're going to enhance the local environment. This draft plan takes all these priorities into account. I absolutely understand the concerns of some residents about development and the need for infrastructure to support it, and that's why this plan makes the need for infrastructure absolutely clear. Anyone concerned about the local plan who has alternative suggestions, evidence or information will have the opportunity to present that to the independent government inspector, who will judge whether the plan is sound or not. So while I understand the concerns that some residents have, what I don't understand and what I cannot forgive is the behaviour of the Tory-led opposition, who locally have spent 4 years scaring people, spreading rumour and misinformation, giving the impression that the borough is going to lose all our green space. We've seen the rise of a so-called independent group who've built a career on the back of this scaremongering. Opposition councillors have a public duty to tell residents the truth, that at least 59% of our great borough will remain in the green belt, plus our outstanding parks and green spaces. And this plan is focused on jobs, it's focused on homes, and it's focused on growth for St Helens Borough. They either need to get behind it or come up with a deliverable, evidence-based, ambitious plan of their own, which they could have spent the last 4 years developing. I absolutely support everything colleagues have said, and I thoroughly recommend that we approve this for the next stage. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much, everyone. The next item is highways. Councillor Bowden.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Right, thank you. This report before you, Chair, outlines the funding that the council has secured to invest in the highways infrastructure of the borough. The funding has been secured from both the Liverpool City region and the government, and it will support the authority in our recovery from COVID-19 restrictions. It will facilitate maintenance and improve our roads, carriageways and structures, and it will deliver improved walking and cycling measures. And whilst the funding is welcome, it does not allow us to fully address the work required. And I would ask that colleagues note the detail at 4.8 in the report that sets out the scale of the challenge in terms of the work required. The council, and this is important to note as well, is responsible for 780 kilometres of adopted highway network. It's the largest asset that the council owns and is worth a staggering £1.8 billion, with a maintenance backlog of £56.8 million caused in part by a lack of government funding. As I said at the start, I welcome the funding that we've received, in particular from the Liverpool City region, and it's to the credit of our working relationship that we have, and you have, Councillor Baines, with the regional mayor, that this funding has been obtained. And I have to say as well, down to good work of officers in putting together the funding bits. So the funding made available to us will be put to good use. And the report outlines a major programme of investment in developing our highways network, and this will support economic, social and environmental renewal. Through the work of our officers, we have secured £8.8 million from a variety of different funding sources, and this report allocates the funding to a high-level programme across the borough for investment in easing congestion and improving safety for all road users and pedestrians. We will be investing in our key route network. We will be addressing potholes. We will, where required, resurface roads and implement traffic schemes to address issues. We also maintain bridges, street lighting, drainage and street furniture. I also, Chair, want to assure you that we will be doing this in the most cost-effective way possible. And so to assist in this, within the next year, I will be bringing back to Cabinet a highways asset management plan, and also will be setting out policies that will direct spend to where it can deliver the best outcomes for our borough for the best value for money. And so, Cabinet, can I ask you to consider and agree the recommendations within the report?
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Any questions or comments from colleagues?
No.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Next, item 12, we've got an update on, sorry, I've lost my agenda. Computer's frozen. Item 12 is Town Deal Accelerated Fund and Liverpool City Region Town Centre Fund update. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Leader. This is another really positive report that brings forward an opportunity for the investment of £2 million in St Helens and Earlstown town centres. This investment will play a significant role in St Helens' approach to recovery. It will support local businesses, act as a catalyst for future investment and accelerate the delivery of the council's regeneration programmes. The proposals will form a key part of St Helens' economic recovery plan, which I will be bringing to Cabinet in November. The council has secured two significant, very different funding opportunities. One will support local businesses and the other will deliver space for physical change. Both have challenging delivery timescales, but we are up for this type of challenge. We will receive £1 million from the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority Town Centre Fund and £1 million the government's Town Deal Accelerated Fund. The repurposed £1 million Town Centre Fund action plan will deliver a package of support across St Helens and Earlstown town centres to existing businesses to help them to adapt to the much changed high street. The fund will provide businesses grant to help businesses diversification and adaptation, create an innovative hub for communities and businesses to innovate, promote the importance of local providers and supply chains, encourage accreditation to provide reassurance to customers, develop safe cultural activities that celebrate St Helens, match those in need of employment with local jobs, and help local businesses to embrace technology to compete with the global giants. The second fund is from the government, where, if agreed, we will receive £1 million accelerated Town Deal Fund grant. This fund will lay the foundation for the future investment through the Town Deal Investment Plan. In the tight timescales given by government, the challenge was identifying a scheme that could be delivered by March next year. The challenging delivery timescales meant that some of the things that we would like to do were just not possible in the time. Therefore, we have decided that the most appropriate scheme is the demolition of the Shalom Way car park to create a new waterfront site for development. The demolition will bring important historic canal waterfront site into the town centre, creating a catalyst site for commercial, leisure or housing development, and is consistent with our heritage strategy and ambitions for the canal. Of course, this will bring some disruption, but we have plenty of car parking in the town centre, especially given the recent improvements to the Tontine car park. And I wanted to reassure members that we are also exploring innovative uses to bring forward on the site in the meantime, and we will work with our partners on the Town Deal Board in developing them further. So I am hoping you will accept this funding and approve our plans so we can get on and start making a difference in our town centres. Can I therefore ask for you to approve the recommendations set out on page 282 of your agenda papers, and I'm happy to take any questions and comments.
Thank you. Councillor Gomez-Asprom.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a quick one, really. So some of the finer detail. This is a fantastic scheme. Those of you, I was at school when the last time something similar to this happened, but I remember them doing it. So it was the SRB schemes, which came from the then Labour government in around 1999-2000. Now, at the time, they were massive schemes, but this very much feels like that. We're doing the right thing by supporting businesses, enabling them to do things rather than doing it for them. So some of the things that I thought were quite interesting is the allocation of £500,000 as a scheme providing up to £5,000 grant to support businesses to diversify and grow. We need that more than ever coming out of, going through what we're not out of it yet, going through what we are doing. The other one that I thought was really interesting was the hubs in St Helens Town Centre and Earlstown Town Centre to create an innovative space with Wi-Fi and broadband access. That's perfect for places that need to get access to that type of stuff and get the foot in the door in the world of business, really. The digital high streets aspect is fantastic, and it's like the Shalom Way site is an interesting one because contaminated can mean many different things. In that case, it's got a massive lump of a car park on it that blocks up most of St Helens town centre. So by dropping that and getting that site shovel ready, it accelerates the bigger ambitions for St Helens town centre going out that way towards what was Tesco and the Range, and then onto where the canal is, which is a cracking feature that you can't see from anywhere because there's a massive concrete car park in front of it. So I really welcome this, and they're all stuff to get things shovel ready to then go. So we need to build on that by bidding for as many other possible funds we can get, whether it's heritage or anything else. But fantastic report, again showing how, when people look at the council tax form and say, what do I get for being in city region? This is one of those things they can point at and do the same way they do with Newton train station. So it's a fantastic report showing how Labour can do it better locally, and we don't really need to rely on the government to intervene when we can deliver it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Okay, just to echo what Councillor Macaulay said and Councillor Gomez-Asprone, completely agreed. This item, it's yet another positive news story, and it's yet another example of Labour delivering in local government, whether it's at council level here or city region level. It's Labour working together to deliver what our communities need. There are so many good aspects to this report, but I've no doubt the Shalom Way aspect of it will get the headlines, because that will make a big difference. And it should make a big difference. That's why we're doing it. We are very lucky in St Helens town centre to have a canal. We're one of the few towns around that have got a canal in the heart of the town centre. The problem there at the moment is nobody can see it, and some people don't even know it's there because it's blocked on all sides. We've got the fantastic World of Glass. We've got a fantastic canal side cafe, and that's the closest you can get to it, really, in a nice environment. We want to change that. So doing this will open up that whole area, and it will kickstart regeneration of that part of St Helens town centre. So it's very exciting. I absolutely support it. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Great.
Agreed.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Councillor Macaulay. 30 is Ofsted monitoring report. Councillor Charlton.
Oh my God.
You're on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can, yeah.
I can't see anything. I don't know what's happened to my screen. So can you see me?
We can, yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry, I really have no clue what's happening. Oh, have I gone? Hello?
Hello, you're still there. I think we've lost Councillor Charlton. Does one of the officers want to pick this one up? Or we'll try and get it back?
Leader, maybe you want to go to the next item and then we have this item last? I
would, but Councillor Charlton's doing the next item as well, because Councillor Grucut's had to leave early for childcare reasons, so Councillor Charlton's doing the Red Bank item as well.
We will just try and redial in Councillor Charlton now. I'll just put the crest up while the public are watching.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, we've got it, Councillor Charlton. Thank you. You can carry on now. Oh, you're just on mute.
Can I suggest telephone? I think she's gone again.
We've got
Right.
you now, if you can talk.
I'm not going to touch anything again, right? Am I with you now?
Yes.
Brilliant. Sorry about that. The Ofsted report, so it provides feedback to Cabinet following the Ofsted monitoring visit. I won't labour it, but I would just like to highlight some of the findings from Ofsted, because it was the first virtual Ofsted visit. They acknowledged the increased funding of nearly 30% that we put into the service, which in turn has led to an increased capacity across the service, enabled us to have a dedicated DCS, increased capacity for social work teams and for social workers, and reducing caseloads. So I don't think that it's any coincidence that financial investment that we've made has really helped us on our improvement journey, and continued for us to have an improving picture. They also said that leaders have implemented enhanced systems and processes for quality assurance. The changes are starting to improve for the young people coming into care. There's better management oversight, there's better supervision. It was a really positive report that we received from Ofsted, especially given that we're in the midst of a pandemic. Social workers have had to find innovative ways of working. So it's an improvement journey that we're on. We know ourselves, we know what we need to do, so we know it's not all rosy in the garden. However, we do have to acknowledge the massive strides that we've made that are laid out in the letter that we received from Ofsted. Going forward, we're going to have more inspections. Ofsted could be in any time, but we welcome that, because actually they'll be able to see the continued improvement journey that we're making. So it would be remiss of me not to thank staff and officers for the hard work and the commitment, the innovative ways of working, all the things that they've done. They embraced Ofsted, they engaged in a virtual visit, which must have been really difficult, and we really need to acknowledge that. Just an additional thing, which is an aside, but we also received the DFE report as well, which was really positive. Their 6-month review, they used language like "we know ourselves," the culture is changing, and I just think that we really need to acknowledge that, and I wouldn't want to speak on this without acknowledging that. So if just Cabinet can approve the recommendations, that would be great. Thank you. I'm not going to touch anything.
Thanks, Nola. Are there any questions or comments on that item? I think it's very positive. We're not where we want to be, and nobody's taking anything for granted. And everyone, officers and us alike, are all well aware that have a lot of hard work still to do, but we are going in the right direction. And I want to thank you, Councillor Charlton, for the impact you've made since coming into post last summer as well. So thank you, and thanks to all the officers involved. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, item 14. So, Councillor Gomez-Asprin, you're going to have to exit stage left.
Thank
item
you.
14
I'll bid you all a good evening, just because it's the last item on the agenda, so I'll leave the meeting now. In real life, I would walk out of the room, but we can't do that. So, goodbye and speak to you all soon.
Bye.
Thanks. Back to you, Councillor Charlton.
Right, thanks, Chair. So the report that you've got before you sets out the proposals which will improve the educational experience of some of our most vulnerable pupils by creating a modern, fit-for-purpose school building. Pupils at Penkford, as many of you will know, have got a range of social, emotional or mental health issues. And many of those young people that are placed there are cared for children or under the care of the mental health services. So the young people that we have at Penkford face considerable challenges in life, and they need and deserve a better environment which will help them to support them and help them to thrive. So I know that Cabinet have previously discussed that the Penkford School buildings have exceeded their life expectancy. And whilst over summer, some remedial work has been undertaken and the school is in a safe condition, we do need to find an alternative. So we've assessed a range of options for improving the current site through to a complete new build, and they're set out in your report in paragraph 6 of the report. But the conclusion is that the redevelopment of Red Bank Educational Unit is considered to represent a better option for the children and young people and deliver better value for the money and long-term sustainability. So the proposal that you've got before you allows us to expand the number of pupils at the same time as we've got increasing pressures on our high needs spending, and demand for specialist provision for pupils with SEND rises. So it's part of a range of initiatives to develop more cost-effective quality provision, which reduces resilience on costly places in independent schools, so we can deliver it for ourselves. So a feasibility study has concluded that Red Bank Educational Unit could be repurposed as a suitable alternative for Penkford School at an approximate cost of 6.8 million. The details of the financing of the scheme are set out in paragraph 8.7. All of the buildings on the site aren't considered to be viable for reuse and therefore represent a liability to both the council and the company. So the relocation of Penkford to Red Bank is still subject to approval from the Charity Commission, but I propose that Cabinet approve the recommendations set out in paragraph 2 of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Charlton. Any questions or comments? Councillor Bell. Sorry, I missed your request on the last item as well. I apologise.
It's okay. On the last item, it was just to say congratulations to Councillor Charlton, who I know has worked tirelessly within her service area and absolutely dedicated to improvement. So, you know, well done, Nova. You're doing an amazing job. So on this item, just to say, it's great to see that this has now come to Cabinet for approval. It's been lobbied. It's something that the Newton and Earlstown councillors have lobbied hard on for quite a while and relentlessly. So it's great to see this coming forward. And essentially, it boils down to the fact that young people in Penkford at the moment deserve to have a fit for purpose building to be educated in, and also the teachers who work there, who are incredibly dedicated, deserve to have a fit for purpose building to deliver their teaching. You know, and it's that simple. So I'm really glad to see this come forward. What I would say is that the Penkford site can't be left without a plan either, and I look forward to a report coming to Cabinet with a time frame for the demolition of Penkford when the school is vacated, but also a plan to restore that land as soon as possible to new usage. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Any further questions or comments? Is that report agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you, everyone.
Agreed.
Item 15 is exclusion of the public due to financial items. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.